UFO buzzing around the historic Apollo 11 moon mission. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin tells us what he thinks he saw. Arizona's former governor once dismissed the Phoenix lights that stunned hundreds of eyewitnesses 10 years ago. He'll explain why he now says they could not have been military flares. Plus, the stories behind the close encounters former Presidents Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter allegedly had. And a return to Roswell, New Mexico, where the UFO controversy began 60 years ago with the man who says his father showed him debris from an alien spacecraft. It's all next on Larry King Live. Good evening. It's a topic that won't go away. 60 years ago, July 1947, the small town of Roswell, New Mexico, went from obscurity to global renown after reports that a UFO had crashed there. Today, people who suggest the possibility that life exists in other galaxies look to Roswell as a modern event that seems to back up the theories. We welcome Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. Here in Los Angeles. He was shown UFO debris by his father, Major Jesse Marcel. He's author of The Roswell Legacy. Stanton Friedman, one of the foremost experts on Roswell and UFOs. And in Roswell, New Mexico, is Julie Schuster, Executive Director of the International UFO Museum and Research Center at Roswell. Julie's father, Walter Hott, was the Public Information Officer at Roswell Air Base. He put out the press release about the UFO. Dr. Marcel, tell us about your dad.
Well, he was the base intelligence officer for the 509th Bomb Group, which is the bomb group that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan and won the war for us.
They were based at Roswell?
They were based at Roswell, at Roswell Army Airfield. And as the intelligence officer, his job was to investigate unusual events. And a rancher found some strange debris on his ranch land some miles northwest of Roswell. He called the sheriff, brought some to the sheriff. The sheriff didn't know what this was, so the sheriff then called the base commander, Colonel Blanchard, to look into this. And since my dad was the intelligence officer, he sent he and a CIC agent out to the ranch. CIC was a forerunner of the CIA at that time. Counterintelligence Corps. And when my dad got out there, a large area of strange-looking debris. This was not remains of a weather balloon or a radar target, because the rancher had found those before. So this is totally different from that. So in order to determine what this was, he picked up a certain represented portion of the debris, brought it into Roswell. Now, it just so happens our house was on the way to Roswell, to the base there. So even though it was late at night, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, he came in, woke my mother and myself up.
You were a kid?
I was a kid, 11 years old at that time. Mm-hmm. And he had already spread some debris out on the kitchen floor. And he said, look at this. I think this is parts of a flying saucer, or words to that effect. You know, being a child, I was not quite sure what a flying saucer was, but he was so excited, I thought, well, you know, I better look at this. So he's looking for...
He was a major.
He was a major at that time. And he said, look at this. There's, look for electronic components, like vacuum tubes, resistors. It wasn't anything like that at all. But it was strange. There was foil. There was...
so what eventually happened? What did he see?
Okay, what he did, we looked at this for a period of time. Then he gathered it back up, then brought it back to the air base that night. And consequently flew this to General Ramey's office in Fort Worth. And when he came home later, he told my mother and myself, never talk about this again. It was a non-event, don't talk about it, period.
General Ramey was head of the 8th Air Force. Jesse reported to his boss, Colonel Blanchard. He reported to General Ramey.
And this proceeded to lead to a cover-up, in your opinion?
There's no question, because General Ramey...
Cover-up of what?
Well, okay, interesting question. I think alien spacecraft, and they put phony wreckage out. This is General Ramey. And here's his chief of staff, Thomas Jefferson Dubose. And I managed to locate General Dubose, by this time a retired general, mind you, many years later. And he told me that he took a call from Ramey's boss in Washington telling him, get the press off our back, I don't care how you do it. Send some of that wreckage up here today. There's a great headline, Larry.
That's a great headline.
He said, send some of that wreckage up here today with one of your Colonel Couriers. I don't want you ever to talk about it again, not even with your buddy Roger Ramey. That's an order. Do I need to put it in writing? No, sir.
I've done so many shows on this.
I know.
Over the years, as you know, we went out in UFO territory in Nevada. Where was that? 51, Area 51.
Near Rachel, Nevada.
And what has never been answered is, why cover it up?
On my
Okay,
website,
let's say there's life in outer space. Well,
That
let's
is
say
the
they came
question.
here. Okay.
That is the question.
Were they out to destroy us? What?
I have a paper on my website called the UFO Why questions, and that's the biggest one. Why the cover-up? I give 6 reasons. You want to figure out how they work. They make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems. You've got wreckage. Rule number 1 for security. I worked under security for 14 years, Larry, is you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. They listen to you, too, after all.
So you're still working on this 40 years later, still working on...
Yeah, believe it or not.
All right, Julie, hold on. Julie Schuster is executive director of the International UFO. Your father was, in the famous name, Walter Hott, he was public information officer. Was he asked to cover it up, too?
My father all along said that he issued the press release, and when he asked to see the debris, he said no. He, as far as a cover-up, being part of the cover-up, no. To my knowledge, he was not.
What did the press release say?
The press release basically said, and using his words, because I've heard it many, many times, was, we have in our possession a flying saucer. It's being flown to higher headquarters at Fort Worth, and his biggest regret on that press release was using the words, it's being flown to higher headquarters, because the media called from around the world saying, how did they know how to fly it? And he had to explain it was being put on aircraft. And then he would, you know, that was his biggest thing. And he said, but he would also add, but it was not of this earth. So that was basically his story.
That was the release. What did your father believe?
My father believed it was not of this earth. It was not a craft of ours. It was something unknown, and he used the words, not of this earth. He was very emphatic about that.
He told me that, too.
Do you know why we've not heard of it, or what's your guess, Jesse, in a long time?
Well, I'm not sure why we haven't heard about it, because I think the American public is well enough informed about space to know about this, that they deserve to know that there's other life out there, that we're not the only ones. Because if we are, there's an awful lot of wasted space out there.
We'll take a break and be back with more. Our full show tonight devoted to UFOs. We have a skeptic as well. He'll be with us. Don't go away.
The strange wreckage that Brazel discovered spanned an area 300 yards wide by a mile long. That parcel of land, known to investigators as the debris field, is where some believe an extraterrestrial craft blew apart and fell to Earth.
Over that period of time, dummies were dropped all around there. And I think it's logical to assume that the people there saw Air Force ambulances come out, they saw gurneys come out, they saw body bags come out because the dummies were put into body bags to protect them. They saw people in pith helmets, they saw people in shorts out there brushing the bushes looking for the remnants of the balloons. And when you put all that stuff together and spin it, you find that it fits perfectly with many of the occurrences in Roswell during that era.
Remaining with us, Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., Stanton Friedman, and Julie Schuster. By the way, Dr. Marcel wrote The Roswell Legacy. The foreword was written by Stanton Friedman. Joining us now, Michael Shermer, the publisher of Skeptic magazine. Skeptic did a whole issue, a major part of it, an issue on Roswell a couple of years back. And James Fox, filmmaker, executive producer of the feature-length documentary Out of the Blue. The definitive investigation of the UFO phenomenon. That documentary is narrated by our good friend Peter Coyote and was just released on DVD. Is that the one in which Presidents Carter and Ford discussed their sightings?
Yes.
What do they say?
Jimmy Carter said he actually saw a UFO, and he describes he was with, I think, 10 witnesses. And
he was on a plane, right?
No, he was actually standing outside in Georgia, I believe, and that was when he was a congressman. And he said he just shot off at governor. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. He was governor. Yeah, shot off at a high rate of speed and disappeared.
And Ford?
Ford was involved. It was a very major sighting. There's the equivalent sighting that happened over the state of Arizona that's actually happened over in Chicago. Was it 1966, Stan Friedman?
I'm not sure.
I think it was 1966, but the Air Force came forward with some swamp gas explanation, and Ford pushed for Michigan. Yes, Ford pushed for congressional hearings, and he admitted that on.
And that's out in DVD now, right?
Yes.
All right, Michael, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think it's good to start with separating two separate questions. Are there extraterrestrial intelligences somewhere in the cosmos, and have they come here? So we have no evidence for either one. Probabilities are probably we're not alone. But it's a vast, empty universe. It's hard to get here, and so forth. The set of evidences used to prove that they've come here are sub what we would expect in a scientific debate. For example, if you're a biologist and you want to name a new species, you have to actually have a type specimen, an actual body. So I always say to the Loch Ness monster people or Bigfoot or aliens, show me the body. I mean, once we have that, then we have what scientists consider to be empirical data, where we can dissect it, photograph it, discuss it, look at it, and so forth. So far, this is still at the level of grainy videos, blurry photographs, and anecdotes.
What about
things
strange metals being taken away and told not to say anything about it?
Okay, so first of all, do governments lie? Do they have security cover-ups? Do they have military secrets? Yes, of course. So this is in the middle of the Cold War. This debris that was shown in the photograph was described as, and it looks like, balsa wood, tape, balloons, and in fact, this is Project Mogul. So in the middle of the Cold War, we're launching these high-altitude balloons to monitor Soviet upper atmosphere nuclear explosions.
Larry, we're simply ignoring the evidence. Dr. Shermer isn't a skeptic. He's a debunker. He starts with the presumption there's nothing to this. The explanations away from reality, there's no question that stuff isn't part of what Jesse Marcel brought in.
This looks like balsa wood and tape.
Of course it does, but that's not what was found. That's not what was found out in the desert.
This stuff was switched.
No.
They switched it.
The original descriptions on July 8th are very different. The rancher was grabbed, brought back into town, fed a whole new story with information that simply doesn't fit reality. The Mogul balloon explanation doesn't fit. The materials are wrong, the location is wrong, the timing is wrong.
Would it surprise anybody to learn that our government told people, don't say this, do say that, because we're in the middle of the Cold War?
Of course. The question is to look at the evidence and what he saw.
I saw something totally different from
this. This is not what was recovered.
He's the only one in the room that saw something.
Yes.
11 years old, but he remembers.
I remember that very well. In spite of being 11, because it was such a very intriguing experience. You know, the most important thing I saw was the beam-like material had some symbols along the inner surface. They're purple, violet, semi-reflective of light, but small, about 3/8 of an inch in diameter or in length.
They didn't look like anything you'd ever seen?
I thought at first it was like Egyptian hieroglyphics, but it wasn't. It was more like mathematical or geometric symbols. And they're all...
Did you have another guess for it?
Not at that time, no.
His father told me when I first talked to him back in the 70s that there was nothing conventional out on that field. We got an area 3/4 of a mile long, hundreds of feet wide, nothing conventional.
Julie, did your father see it?
My father came out with a statement after his death we released that said he did see the craft, yes.
He did see it. Find anything in the
Yes,
craft?
sir.
Did he find anything in the craft?
I don't know. He doesn't go into that in the statement, and he was not privy. He was not out at the site. What he saw, I believe, was at the Air Force Base.
Weaponry aside, Michael,
well,
if they are extraterrestrials, why hide it?
Yeah, right. That's what I say. Why hide it? Look, this would be the greatest discovery in the history of science. NASA would be elated. Of course, they go to Congress to get more funding. Why would anybody cover this up? And look what happens when they make even the smallest discoveries. Of course, we hear all about it.
James?
I have a question to ask you.
Yes.
If UFOs, and I'm speaking hypothetically for a moment here, if UFOs are real, it would be one of the greatest discoveries of our time. Do you agree with that?
Of course.
Now, if UFOs, when I use the word if, were buzzing around in our airspace, who would be best equipped to know about it?
Well, our government, perhaps.
Military?
Maybe.
So we've
But
got
maybe
the
not.
highest-ranking military officials in the world telling us right now that these things are real. We've got generals, we've got admirals, we've got colonels, we've got presidents, governors. If we can't believe them, who can we believe?
A lack of evidence.
I'm sorry. If we can't believe them, who can we believe?
Physical
wouldn't
trace
necessarily.
cases, radar
There is no.
visual
Okay,
sightings.
listen, guys, wait.
Evidence. You don't talk about evidence.
This is simply a lack of evidence. So when I say,
No.
where's the spacecraft, you say, they hid it. Where's the documentation? They covered it up. This is like the weapons of mass destruction thing. Where's the evidence? The fact that we can't find any means that they're there because
Let me
it's
get a
not
break, and we'll be right back with more on this edition of Larry King Live.
The universe we live in. What is our relationship to the larger reality? I looked up, and all of a sudden, there was this, gotta say it, flying saucer.
Didn't even make a sound. Not even a sound.
He said pussy, very bad. I saw one, but I don't know what, it just disappeared.
The skeptic here is the only one that brings these.
He drinks beer, too.
We worry about evidence. We don't worry about...
The truth is, James, we want it to be true. Don't you think 90% of the public wants it to be true?
I challenge anyone out there who's watching the show tonight, and I bring this to your attention as well, to watch out of the blue and conclude there's nothing to this phenomenon. It's impossible.
Well, when you say nothing to it, of course there's something to
It's
explain.
inexplicable.
Before we say something is out of this world, let's first make sure that it's not in this world.
Well,
and there's so much we don't know about the
process of
natural
elimination.
world. There's
What
so
is
much
it not?
It could be military
What is it
aircraft.
not? No, hang on a second. The military...
All right, there's a 1997 event in your film,
Yes.
right? What happened?
A very massive craft flew over the state of Arizona. It was
Maybe.
witnessed... No, it's the fact.
Light.
Okay.
Light.
No, a craft. This kid said he could have hit it with a rock.
Don't say
It
massive,
was so low.
just
It was a
something.
massive craft that flew... This kid said he could have hit it with a rock.
Well, so what?
All right, well, I'm just telling you what the
We're
witnesses
watching
told
this
me.
now.
No, you're not.
No, you're not
watching
watching.
No, that's not it. That's wrong
Flares.
information.
That's,
Okay.
No, that's
whatever.
right.
That's some B-roll from the footage, but it's just...
But that is the Phoenix Lights. That's right.
No, those are the flares seen at 10 o'clock, not the massive
Think of that as
thing
eye candy over...
seen earlier in the evening
Okay,
by...
well,
Larry,
back up a minute.
Larry,
One
think
at a
of any
time.
of us
Okay,
trying to
let me finish.
explain what that is at
So
night.
there were a lot of people out under the night sky looking up to get a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet. And at about 8:30, this very large boomerang-shaped craft flew over and was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people. About 2 months later, an article broke. It got a lot of local media, and an article broke on USA Today, which pretty much put it to the forefront of in the U.S. The story broke, and Fife Simon came forward and had a press conference, said he was going to get to the bottom of it. He was governor of Arizona at the time, and later that afternoon he had a press conference, an unscheduled press conference, where he had one of his aides dressed up in an alien suit and made a joke out of the whole thing. Well, I was always puzzled because I spoke to so many of the witnesses that saw this craft. I was wondering, like, why he did that, why he did what he did. So I contacted him 10 years later, and not only did he recant the statement, he said he investigated the thing, and then he himself, who's a captain in the Air Force, saw it.
Let me ask some fair questions.
Okay.
Are you open to the possibility, Michael?
Of course. I mean, all science is open to that. But just being open to it and what we would like to be true does not make it true.
Are you open to the possibility, Jesse, you're wrong?
I am. But not really. Not
Not really. Well, look, Larry, this has all the earmarks of a myth. It started really in the late 1980s. If you look in the UFO literature of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, there's almost no mention of Roswell. Other incidences are the big meccas of ufology.
That shows you how successful they were.
This becomes... 40 years after the fact, eyewitnesses start remembering things. We know about the psychology of misremembering, confabulation of different memories. We know the myth making. And think about just one thing. Why would the aliens look like this?
Well,
these are
who drew
bipedal.
that? Who drew that?
Yeah, what did you get?
This,
You don't
this
need to
comes
pay
from,
money to draw an alien.
this comes from television
but
designers,
that's not drawn
from
by
eyewitness
some-
accounts. And once it got started, once this
You
image
mean
began...
from the National Trade Wacko magazine?
Yeah, that's right. But once that became the image of what aliens would look like, that's what people began to see in their dreams and their abduction experiences. That's
Now,
right.
wait a minute.
So,
Hang on,
there you
I'm talking
begin.
about
Go
Phoenix, Arizona.
unchallenged.
Can you finish
The
with that?
Betty and
Hold
Barney
it.
Hill case goes back to 1961. It's a new book by myself and Betty's niece. There was a book in 1966 by John Fuller, The Interrupted Journey, bestseller all over the world. A television movie, James Earl Jones in it, 1975. it updates it by 40 years or so, because Kathleen has all her stuff. They were strange little guys. And the work was done to elicit these memories by a psychiatrist who had no interest in UFOs, didn't believe in flying saucers, kept trying to make them think, oh, it was just Betty's dream. And one of the things we do in the book is go over how he was pushing them in the direction of not alien, despite all the evidence that it was alien.
But Stan, you know that on Earth, primates have only evolved once. What are the chances of that happening
we
on
don't
some other
know.
planet, and they're looking pretty much like us?
We don't know.
And then they come here and find us. What are the chances of that?
The chances are very good, because that's what the evidence shows.
These sorts of
So you're saying the governor of Arizona was hallucinating, and thousands of other witnesses didn't see that?
No, that's a different story. UFOs are literally just unidentified flying objects.
Julie,
in science, it's okay to just say we don't know.
Julie, did your father go to his grave believing?
Yes, he did. He really did. He was very firm in the fact that he said it was not of this earth. You know, one of the things that seems to be being forgotten to me is the fact that that July 8th, 1947 newspaper is a fact. You know, we may not have a lot of the scientific evidence that is being discussed, but that newspaper and the July 9th are facts. I mean, those are evidence in themselves, and that says it happened. You know, so my father said it did. Numerous people, you know, I was born and raised here. I know these people. They're real people, and they had better things to do with their lives than make up a hoax.
She brings up a really good point, too.
But not hoax. Why not just honestly misperceiving something? We know that
the only atomic bombing group in the world with elite group and military group and handpicked officers and handpicked men, and they're making up stories. Walter wasn't just a PIO.
Stan, your whole case is still based on anecdotes. We need something more than that.
We have 3,000 physical trace cases. We have multiple witnesses.
Well,
go look, Mike.
I brought something. What have you got?
We have a headline
where's one of those? Where's one of those probes from the dashboard?
I didn't say probe.
Where's one of
I
the
said physical
gadgets
trace
from
cases,
the
multiple
spacecraft?
witness radar, visual
Give
cases.
us something, you know, like a...
I'm saying photographs examined by scientists who say...
you know.
You're making proclamations. You're not doing investigation.
All right, I got to get a break, but I want to show this headline first. This is from the Roswell Daily Record. RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region.
Roswell Army Airfield is the initial.
We thank you, Dr. Marcel and Julie, for being with us. They'll be gone. Others will be coming in. Later in our next half hour, astronaut Buzz Aldrin and what he has to say about a certain UFO's sighting. It's very important. Stick around.
Do these lights belong to visitors from outer space? Hundreds of people across the valley think it's a distinct possibility. Good evening. I'm Mark Bailey.
And I'm Robin Sewell. Thanks for joining us. We start tonight with those strange dots of light that were the talk of the town.
Yeah, everybody was excited about the comet. But in the middle of that, these very mysterious lights appeared over Phoenix, over Maricopa County.
Talk of the town.
Yeah, everybody was excited about the comet. But in the middle of that, these very mysterious lights appeared over Phoenix, over Maricopa County.
Welcome back. Just a quick heads up for all you computer-savvy viewers. Our latest podcast is now available online. You can download it anytime you want. It's my interview with some of professional wrestling's biggest names, past and present, people like Chris Jericho and John Cena and Bret Hart. They talk about the life and death of former wrestling star Chris Benoit. To download it, just go to cnn.com/Larry King or subscribe to iTunes. Stanton Friedman remains with us, so does Michael Shermer, so does James Fox, whose film Out of the Blue, The Definitive Investigation of the UFO Phenomena, is available on DVD. And we're now joined by George Noory, the host of Coast to Coast, a radio show that counts a large number of UFO enthusiasts among its listeners. How did that develop, George?
Larry, we followed in your footsteps. Of course, you made the fort for us, and then Art Bell came along, and then I replaced Art in it.
Oh, so you do the all-night show?
I do the Coast to Coast AM all-night show.
And I never got UFO callers.
Never?
No, occasionally. But Bell got UFO.
Art got them all. He got them all.
Now you get them.
And now I get what used to...
What percentage are Cookieville?
Cookieville? I'd say about 10%.
That's all.
Honestly.
Have you become a believer?
I have believed that this planet has been visited since I was a little boy. My mother brought me home a book once by Walter Sullivan, the late New York Times science writer, called We Are Not Alone. I was convinced that there was something going on. Ironically, when I was 21, my very first radio interview was with Stanton Friedman in Detroit. First one. And he hasn't changed since.
Do you book people like Michael Shermer on?
Michael's been on the program. He is what I call my skeptic. He debates people. He goes in the cage. Two go in, one comes out.
What do you think the answer is to the unanswerable? If it happened, why is it covered up?
I don't necessarily know, Larry, why it's covered up, but a couple things have happened just in the last several weeks. You just had Julie on, Walter Haut's daughter. Walter signed an affidavit in 2002. He died in 2005. That affidavit was just released several weeks ago that testifies that he saw the crash, he saw some of the occupants, and then another person, his name's Clark McClellan, who is not very happy with NASA anymore, but he worked on the ground shuttle fleet. He says that he talked with Wernher von Braun, the father of modern-day rocketry, and he said von Braun told him that he saw the debris at Roswell and aliens that had snakeskin. It's an amazing story, and you know, Stanton is aware of this.
Wernher von Braun said he saw aliens.
According to Clark McClellan. Absolutely.
Remember that he was based.
Good old
He was based at Fort Bliss, which is right down the street from all of this. So it wouldn't be surprising if. I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying it wouldn't be surprising if von Braun would have been called in to look at wreckage of an alien spacecraft. I mean, the world's foremost expert. So.
Given how much we know about the unreliability of human eyewitness testimony, especially when you're observing something at night.
How about daytime?
And you can't tell distance, size. Somebody says it was the size of a ship or whatever. How do you know?
Eyewitness
testimony. What's the comparison factor there?
Don't they use eyewitness testimony in a court of law all the time?
And also to identify.
Here we're talking about a scientific story.
Phenomenon.
May I say something about the way science works, Larry, is that the default assumption is that whatever the claim is, it's not true until it's proved. So the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. And as I said at the beginning, we have to have some physical evidence. Anecdotes and eyewitness testimony and so on is a good place to start a research program, but at some point you want to name a new species, you've got to have an actual type specimen, you got to have a piece of the spacecraft, as I've always said, to Stan and others. Bring back one of those photos.
We don't have soil sample analysis, radar operators doesn't mean anything.
The reason we can identify most cases
is
that people are good observers and poor interpreters. You can't have it both ways. They are good observers in many cases.
We're awful. We're horrible at
it. It's interpreted. Throw out all the courts of law. Scientists have to observe too.
They're not. The courts of law, eyewitness testimony is not.
Can I ask everyone a question just quickly we can all agree on? If UFOs were real and they were buzzing our airspace, who would be the best equipped to know about it?
Well, the Air Force.
Right. And they're telling us that these things are real. Why aren't we believing them?
Saying that? Who is saying that?
I've got FAA officials, we've got colonels and generals and admirals and pilots, and the list goes on.
Why would they be any better than you or I?
Because they're trained to know.
No.
They are trained observers.
No.
You can't say
trained observers are no better than just regular observers.
But at what point do you not
we know
believe
this from
people?
the research.
I mean, Michael's been on the program. Walter Haut signs an affidavit that says, I saw these.
I saw something. Yes, of course.
If a pilot is flying a plane, commercial airliner, and he spots something, who does he report it to?
Well, the FAA wouldn't be...
The pilots are very reluctant to report. There's a new report coming out within a couple of weeks, I'm told by the guy who wrote it, about the O'Hare sightings on November 7th, reported in the Chicago Tribune on January 1st. Got 1 million hits that article did on their website, which is utterly incredible. Reports coming out. Here we have guys working for United Airlines spotting something over O'Hare Airport. What are we supposed to do with those guys? Dr. Richard Haynes, retired NASA scientist, has written a report. It'll be out very shortly. There's an organization called NARCAP, National Aviation Reporting Center for Anomalous Phenomena. You didn't hear the word UFO in there.
Yeah, but Stan, you don't have to do anything. You say, what do we do with it? You don't have to do anything with it. In science, anomalies always exist.
I'm a physicist.
Yeah, but you don't have to go
looking at this
go from something we don't know to say, I don't know what this is, to I believe it's an extraterrestrial craft.
Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a break, come back, and then we're going to spend a segment with Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, and then Fife Symington, the former governor of Arizona, and then our panel will come back to close the show. We'll be right back with my friend Buzz Aldrin right after this.
In 1947, Americans found their skies filled with all sorts of strange flying objects.
The UFO phenomenon really took off actually in June of 1947 in the state of Washington, when a pilot by the name of Kenneth Arnold saw many objects going in formation at a very, very high speed by Mount Rainier in Washington.
Arnold said that the 9 silvery objects he'd seen looked like saucers skipping over a pond. The next day, his story was front-page news, and a new term entered the American lexicon: flying saucer.
Only 12 men have ever walked on the moon, and the man who did it the second time anyone walked on the moon was Buzz Aldrin. He was part of the first mission that got there. The NASA astronaut on Apollo 11. He's here with a model of Apollo 11. He was with the first pair with Neil Armstrong, of course. And Buzz, the panel remains so that they might want to pop something at him. But Buzz, what's your connection with this program? What did you see?
What did I see? Well, we the first day out, maybe 6 hours after launch, we were scheduled to make a mid-course correction. And I'd like to show you a few things in this rocket just to point out the condition that we were in. During launch, this boost protective cover comes off, hopefully not with the command module attached, and then the first stage drops off, the second stage drops off. Unfortunately, I can't take this apart, but there's the third stage, and inside is the lunar module, and this is the command and service module. Once, after going an orbit and a half around the Earth, we fire for 5 minutes this engine here, and we head toward the moon. Now, shortly after that, we separate the command and service module, and it turns around like this, and it docks with the lunar module. Now, I'm going to have to be pretty ambidextrous.
Are we getting to a UFO?
We're getting to that, yes.
I only ask in view of time.
I know.
This is fascinating.
You don't want me to be the jury of all these people,
no,
now,
I
do
know.
you? Right. Now, notice these 3 and 4 panels. Whenever the command module separates and turns around, those panels go off in 4 different directions. The rocket, now we're separated from the rocket, and the rocket and the spacecraft, the lunar module and the command module, are heading toward the moon. Now, we orient perpendicular to the plane of the sun, the earth, and the moon, and rotate slowly like this. And we can look out these windows and see the earth drift by and see the moon drift by.
What did you see?
And I saw a light out there. Okay? This is after we had witnessed the upper stage rocket next to us make an evasive maneuver to miss the moon. Later missions, it crashed into the moon so that we could determine the seismic effect of crashing.
So you saw a light.
So we saw a light, and we thought, wonder what that is. You know, there are a lot of lights out there when you're not looking in the direction of the sun. There are a lot of stars, and they're all fixed relative to each other. Now, one of them starts moving, or it's moving, and we know that that's another object. It's not a star.
Stars don't move.
Well, they move, but they're so damn far away that we're not going to...
Hold on. How long did it follow you?
Exactly. That's why I started to do this. Now, we know that if we were to say, Houston, we got a light out the window, it's going along with us, heading for the moon, a lot of these guys are going to go ape, you know? and it's really going to endanger the mission and occupy a lot of our time trying to explain what's going on.
All right.
So we very shrewdly, Neil said, Houston, where is the upper stage? they didn't know right away, but they said, we'll check with the guys in the back room. The guys in the back room in 10 minutes came back and said it's 6,000 miles away. Oops. Well, we figured that's not what we're looking at. So we started thinking a little bit more about these 4 panels, and I'd seen a graph where it showed the separation distance that was calculated before liftoff, before the whole mission went, of where these panels would be in case the spacecraft made some maneuver, and they guaranteed there'd be no contact.
Hold it right there. You got me held up. I'm going to hold Buzz. We're going to add the governor. We'll figure it all out how to do it. And close with all of them, because I'm suddenly involved in this. What the hell was that?
Remember when you called me and you thought the alien was in your room? Yeah. But I don't want to talk about that. Oh, okay, sorry.
And there's always sightings of UFOs and all that, so, you know what I mean, people want to see aliens. I want to see an alien.
It's just interesting. They're not human. They're not animals. We don't know what they are.
To think that humans are the only living organism to populate this universe is stupidity.
I think a lot of people want to know that there's something out there that's beyond our Earth.
They're coming, and we'll be ready.
All right, our panel remains. Buzz Aldrin, the NASA astronaut, second man on the moon, remains. We're going to have him pick up in a moment his description of that thing flying across the sky as he heads toward the moon. Fife Symington now joins us, the former governor of Arizona, who in 1997 ridiculed an infamous UFO sighting by thousands of people in his state and recently admitted he was wrong. By the way, Fife runs the Arizona Culinary Institute. Well, you were wrong because...
Well, I saw the Phoenix lights along with hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and when I saw them on that day in March, I didn't say anything about it. And then the whole issue came back up again in the following June with a big USA Today, I think, article, and there was sort of a frenzy about it. And so I felt that a little levity wouldn't hurt, so we did a spoof over the alien invasion, if you will. And I think a lot of people misunderstood what I was doing. We were just having fun trying to lighten people up
so you
over
do
the issue.
Acknowledge what?
Well, I acknowledge that I saw a craft. I was up in the Sunny Slope area around 8 o'clock at night, and I went out to look to the west, where all the news channels were filming the Phoenix lights, and to my astonishment, this large, sort of delta-shaped, wedge-shaped craft moved silently over the valley, over Squaw Peak, dramatically large. Very distinctive leading edge with some enormous lights, and it just went on down to the southeast valley, and I was absolutely stunned because I was turning to the west looking for the distant Phoenix lights, and all of a sudden this apparition appears.
It was not an airplane.
No, it was definitely not an airplane, and not A-10s, and it was certainly not high altitude flares, because flares don't fly in formation.
But he's a pilot.
Okay.
And a captain in the Air Force.
A captain in the Air Force. Buzz, what did you see?
What did I see during the flight?
Yeah,
we saw one of the 4 panels, the 99.999. And these are 3 guys who have flown in space twice and have looked out at the stars and all sorts of things. So, belief, yes, we certainly saw something. We could see, look at it in a second. So it was one of the panels, yeah.
So that's a quick question. Yeah. When you were a test pilot, I think, was it Edwards Air Force Base?
I commanded a test pilot school afterward. I was not a test pilot trained.
Okay, I was told by a very close source of yours that you actually saw something other than that.
A lot of people have said things that I saw. That doesn't mean that I
don't want to reveal the source of national television. Someone very close to you told me that you had another sighting that you actually chased to you.
In your years of flying, have you seen strange things?
I was flying a T-33, I guess, and I looked out and saw a star out there. But it wasn't a star, it was Venus. But it kept following me all along. And you would swear that it's another object out there, and you can turn and... I want to congratulate you on your magic show last night with all the illusions, because now we're getting a lot more illusions tonight, And can you explain everything that happened with Chris Angel last night? No, you can't.
Can't explain it, doesn't make it.
That's right.
Here's what I'm going to do, folks. I'm going to take a break, come back, and get the thoughts in a wind-up session of what all these people think, and especially what the governor and what Buzz think about what the four others have been talking about when we come back.
Public interest in the last few years has increased very greatly in a phenomenon which has been identified as flying saucers. These stories have led to much fiction and much fancy.
Okay, let's do a round robin here. Buzz, what do you think after all you've heard tonight? You think there are...
I wish I could solve your dilemma. I think it's fascinating to hear both sides of this. I really do believe that you need to have very firm evidence, and cover-up is something that just doesn't exist for very long. Sooner or later, somebody's going to squeal on it, or... And I just can't believe that that we would be covering up such a major, significant event as true evidence of beings from somewhere else.
Governor, from what you saw, was that from outer space?
I think it was from another world. I've never seen anything like it, Larry. It was enormous. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And, you know, it was all over the news. Hundreds, if not thousands of people saw it.
It was huge, right?
Yeah, and so...
Traveling fast.
So I know of no other explanation unless Phantom Skunk Works have something cooking that we don't know about. And
two distinguished gentlemen, an astronaut, a governor, different views from what you've seen.
Well, I didn't see what he saw.
I'm not sure. But you say you're waiting for people to come forward. People have come forward. High-ranking military officials have come forward and talked about the validity to this
Stanton,
phenomenon.
do you think we're ever going to know? No.
I hope so. I'm an optimist. Before I leave this planet, I think. And I think this year will be a good year because the media are finally beginning to recognize that there's an awful lot of interest in this subject. You know that, but not everybody does.
We'll never know your side, will we? Because they'll always say...
Well, no. As soon as
you
we
can
have
never prove it.
As soon as we found an actual alien, a body, an actual spacecraft, one of those probes that we hear all about, if somebody brings one of those, okay, there. That's all we need. That's all science needs, is some kind of empirical evidence.
Think we'll ever know, James?
I think that if you watch Out of the Blue, you'll know that we are definitely and have been misled for 60 years or more. I mean, there's no question. I haven't had one person watch this movie with the evidence that we've collected from all around the world. And by the way, I'd like to mention my co-producers, Boris Zuboff and Tim Coleman. But I challenge anyone to watch Out of the Blue and then conclude there's nothing to it. It's impossible.
George, you think we'll know?
Vast universe, Larry. To think that we haven't been visited before, I think is foolish. One of Buzz's colleagues, Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, has told me that he believes we've been visited by extraterrestrials. I think it's real.
Think we will know, Governor?
I hope so. I'm going to be really disappointed if we don't have... But, of course... the skeptics, the professional skeptics, won't be happy unless there's a body.
No.
And but you know we have a lot of evidence, a lot of photographs, a lot of news media coverage of it. In the Lights Over Phoenix was a very compelling, dramatic event, seen by so many people that it's you can't just kind of blow that off and say, oh well, that everybody in Phoenix was hallucinating.
We're almost out of time, Buzz.
I think we're within several hundred years of being able to visit somewhere else. All right? Now, the odds of our being visited in the last 60 years, when we're so close, and you look at the billions of years that we've been in existence here, what an odd coincidence it is that two societies just happen to interact with each other at this time.
Thank you all
when
very
you
much.
Consider that we want to see things.
We're out of time. We'll go look at the moon, Buzz, you and I. Thanks very much for joining.